The diplomatic summit on Space Station Harmony was supposed to be routine for Jack Miller. As a mid-level human diplomat, his job was to smile, make small talk, and try not to cause an interstellar incident. He had been on the space station for 3 weeks now, and the endless meetings were starting to blur together. This summit was different, though. The Zarkai were coming. Jack had never met a Zarkai before. Few humans had. They were a private species from a distant star system who rarely ventured beyond their own borders. The images he'd seen showed tall, blue-skinned beings with silver-flecked eyes that seemed to contain galaxies within them. They were known to be formal, reserved, and very particular about their customs. The main reception hall of Space Station Harmony buzzed with activity. Diplomats from 20 different worlds mingled under the soft glow of artificial lights, designed to be comfortable for all species. Through the large viewing windows, the blue-green planet below them turned slowly, clouds swirling across its surface. Jack tugged at his stiff, formal collar. The human delegation wasn't important enough to merit the best climate controls, and his section of the room was too warm. He sipped water from a glass and watched as the doors slid open to admit the Zarkai delegation. They entered as a group, 6 tall figures in flowing silver robes that matched the flecks in their eyes. Their blue skin ranged from deep ocean tones to lighter sky hues. They moved with a grace that made them seem like they were floating rather than walking. 5 of them stayed close together, speaking only to each other. But the 6th, Jack noticed, drifted away from the group. This Zarkai was smaller than the others, with lighter blue skin and eyes that darted around the room with undisguised curiosity. While the others projected confidence and distance, this one seemed almost nervous. Jack watched as the young Zarkai moved toward the large viewing window, staring out at the stars with what looked like wonder. The other diplomats gave the alien a wide berth, perhaps intimidated by the Zarkai's reputation for being cold and unfriendly. Something about the lone figure's posture, shoulders slightly hunched, hands clasped tightly together, reminded Jack of his first day at a new school when he was 10 years old. Before he could think better of it, he was walking across the room. "First time dealing with humans?" Jack asked, stopping a respectful distance away. The Zarkai turned quickly, silver-flecked eyes widening in surprise. Up close, Jack could see that the alien was young, at least by the standards of their kind. The translator device pinned to. The silver robes hummed softly. "First time away from my homeworld," the Zarkai admitted, voice flowing through the translator with a musical quality that human speech lacked. "I'm Jack Miller, Earth Delegation," he said with a small bow, having read that. Zarkai appreciated the gesture more than handshakes. "I am Zira," the alien replied, returning the bow. "Junior cultural attached to the diplomatic mission." "Junior diplomat too," Jack said with a smile. "They keep us around to do the hard work while the senior staff take all the credit." Zira's head tilted slightly. "You speak with surprising frankness." "Sorry," Jack said. "Human humor. We sometimes say things that aren't quite true to make people laugh." "Fascinating," Zira said, though she didn't laugh. "We have no equivalent concept." An awkward silence fell between them. Jack noticed that. The other Zarkai were watching from across the room, their silver eyes unreadable. "Are you enjoying the reception?" Jack asked finally. Zira glanced around the room. "It is overwhelming, so many species in one place. On my world, we rarely interact with outsiders." Jack nodded toward the buffet table that lined one wall of the reception hall. "The food here is pretty decent. Want to try some human cuisine? It might make this whole diplomatic thing less overwhelming." Hesitation flickered across Zira's blue features before curiosity won out. "That would be acceptable. I have studied human biology and know that your food contains no harmful substances for my species." "Great," Jack said, leading the way through. The crowd, "Trust me, food is the universal language." At the buffet, Jack loaded a plate with samples of Earth Food's tiny sandwiches, vegetable sticks, cheese cubes, and a small pile of French fries. He explained each item as they found a quiet corner table away from the busiest part of the reception. "These are called French fries," Jack said, pushing the golden strips toward her. They're a universal favorite. Potatoes cut into strips and cooked in oil, simple but delicious. Zira studied them with obvious suspicion. Your species considers these diplomacy-worthy? Jack laughed. We consider them worthy of pretty much any occasion. Fancy dinners, casual meals, late-night snacks, French fries work for everything. With obvious reluctance, Zira picked up a single fry between long, slender blue fingers. She sniffed it before. Taking the tiniest bite possible, her eyes widened immediately, silver flecks seeming to dance in the station's light. This is ... She paused, taking another bite. Remarkable. The outside is crisp while the inside is soft, and the flavor. She quickly finished the fry and reached for another. Jack smiled, sliding the rest of his fries onto her plate. They're all yours. Consider it a welcome gift from Earth. As Zira devoured the fries with increasing enthusiasm, neither of them noticed the other Zarkai diplomats watching from across the room, their expressions a mixture of shock and disapproval. The salt crystals enhance the flavor significantly, Zira said, analyzing the taste with scientific precision. And the cooking method creates a perfect texture contrast. Wait until you try them with ketchup, Jack said, reaching for a small, red packet on the table. It's a tomato-based sauce we often dip them in. Zira watched carefully as Jack squeezed some ketchup onto the side of her plate. She dipped a fry into the red sauce and tasted it with the same careful consideration. The acidity balances the salt, she declared. Your species has developed considerable skill in food preparation. We take our snacks very seriously, Jack agreed with a smile. They spent the next hour at the corner table, Jack explaining various Earth foods and customs while Zira shared carefully selected facts about Zarkai culture. Jack noticed she avoided any deep or personal topics, but her initial nervousness had faded as the reception wound down. Jack was called away by his supervisor. I need to go, he said, standing. But it was nice meeting you, Zira. Maybe we'll run into each other again. During the summit, Zira stood as well, bowing formally. The interaction was informative. I appreciate your cultural guidance. By evening's end, Jack had forgotten the small gesture of sharing his fries. It was just a friendly thing to do, nothing special. But as he left the reception, he caught Zira watching him from across the room, her gaze intense and unreadable. Jack smiled and waved before heading back to his quarters. He had no idea that on Zira's world, sharing food was not a casual act. He had no idea what he'd started with a simple plate of French fries. He would find out soon enough. 3 days passed since the reception. Jack sat in his small office on Level 4 of Space Station Harmony, reviewing trade agreements on his tablet. The office was barely big enough for a desk and 2 chairs, but it had a small window that looked out into space. Jack liked to watch the stars when he needed a break from reading boring documents. The station hummed with the quiet sounds of air, systems, and distant machinery. Jack rubbed his tired eyes. He had been working since early morning, and the words on his screen were starting to blur together. Just as he was thinking about getting coffee, his door chimed. Come in, he called. Expecting it to be someone from the human delegation, the door slid open to reveal Zira. The young Zarkai diplomat stood in the hallway, her blue skin seeming to glow under the station's lights. She was holding what looked like a decorated box made of shining metal. Diplomat Miller, she said formally, though her silver-flecked eyes seemed more animated than during their first meeting. Just Jack is fine, he replied with a smile, gesturing to the empty chair across from his desk. Come in. What brings you to my humble office? Zira entered and sat down with perfect posture. She placed the ornate box on his desk and opened it, with careful movements. Inside lay a gleaming metal object that looked like a knife, but with strange patterns etched along its surface. It seemed very old and very valuable. I have brought you the blade of Sharaz, she announced proudly. It has been in my family for 7 generations. Jack blinked in confusion. That's very generous, but I can't accept something so valuable. We only just met. Zira's expression hardened slightly. You have already accepted my oath. This is merely the physical token. What oath? Jack asked, growing more confused by the second. When you shared your... She paused, searching for the word, fries with me, you initiated the bond of shared sustenance. It is a sacred commitment among my people. Jack felt his stomach drop. Zira, on Earth, sharing food is just a friendly gesture. It doesn't mean anything special. Her silver-flecked eyes dimmed visibly. You did not intend to form a protection bond? What now? Among the Zarkai, to share one's food is to pledge protection and loyalty, she explained, her voice becoming flat. When a higher status individual shares with a lower status one, they are taking that person under their protection. It is significant. Jack ran a hand through his hair. And the French fries indicated your willingness to be my protector. In foreign territory, Zira finished. I accepted by consuming them. I had no idea, Jack said honestly. In human culture, it was just being friendly. Zira stood rigidly, closing the ceremonial box with a snap. I see, a cultural misunderstanding, most unfortunate. Jack saw hurt in her eyes, though she was trying to hide it. He felt terrible. In trying to be nice, he had accidentally made some sort of sacred promise, and now was breaking it. Wait, Zira. Just because I didn't know what it meant doesn't mean I regret sharing with you. I'd like us to be friends. Zira paused, still holding the box. Friends, she repeated the word as if testing it. This is a human bond? Yes, Jack smiled. It means people who like each other and help each other. No ceremonial knives required. She considered this for a moment before giving a slight nod. I will research this concept of friends. Until then, I will consider our protection bond ... pending. After Zira left, Jack immediately called his supervisor, Susan White. Susan was in her 50s with short gray hair and a no-nonsense attitude. Her face appeared on Jack's screen. We need to update the cultural briefings on the Zarkai, he explained. Apparently sharing food with them is basically a marriage proposal. Susan sighed heavily. What did you share? French fries. Well, Susan replied after a moment, at least you have good taste. I'll request more information from their cultural attach, but the Zarkai are famously private about their customs. I feel terrible, Jack admitted. I was just trying to be nice. Don't beat yourself up, Susan said. These misunderstandings happen in interspecies diplomacy. Just be more careful going forward. The next morning, Jack found a data tablet outside. His door, when he turned it on, he saw it contained information about human friendships. There were articles, studies, and even clips from human movies showing friends helping each other. At the bottom was a simple message, I wish to understand. Zira, Jack smiled and took the tablet with him to the dining hall. He got breakfast and sat at an empty table. A few minutes later, he saw Zira enter. She looked around until she spotted him, then walked over with a tray of her own food. May I join you? She asked formally. Of course, Jack said. Friends often eat together. Zira sat down across from him. I have been studying your concept of friendship. It seems less formal than our protection bonds, but no less meaningful. That's a good way to put it, Jack agreed. Friendship is flexible. It can be casual or deep, depending on the people involved. They ate quietly for a few minutes. Jack noticed Zira had gotten French fries on her tray and was eating them with obvious enjoyment. The protection bond among my people, Zira said, suddenly began thousands of years ago when food was scarce on our world. To share food was to share life itself. Jack nodded. That makes sense. Many human customs come from our past too, though we sometimes forget why we started them. In the bond of shared sustenance, the protector vows to ensure the protected one's safety, while the protected one vows loyalty and support, Zira continued. It is most commonly formed between family members or very close companions. And I accidentally proposed this by sharing my fries, Jack said. Yes, Zira confirmed. It was particularly significant because I am alone here, far from my family group. Such a gesture from a non-Zarkai was unexpected. Jack thought for a moment. In human friendship, we also protect each other and support each other. Maybe our concepts aren't so different. Perhaps not, Zira agreed. Though humans seem to form these bonds with remarkable ease and frequency, "We're a social bunch," Jack said with a smile. "Sometimes too social, according to a species like the Vorkith who prefer solitude." As they continued talking, Jack noticed the other Zarkai enter the dining hall. They stared at Zira sitting with him, their expressions clearly disapproving. One of them, an older male with dark blue skin, made a sharp gesture toward Zira. Zira straightened her shoulders but did not move. "Elder Mazarin disapproves of my association with you," she explained quietly. "He believes I should formally dissolve the mistaken bond and avoid further contact. Will you get in trouble?" Jack asked, concerned. "Possibly," Zira admitted. "But I'm finding our conversations educational. I would like to continue learning about human friendship, even if it causes problems for you." Zira looked at him directly, her silver-flecked eyes intense. "The Zarkai value loyalty above all else. Even an accidental bond is not easily broken, and ... She paused. "I enjoy the French fries." Jack laughed, relieved by her small joke. "Well, as long as we have French fries, I think this friendship has a solid foundation." As they continued their meal, Jack noticed Zira's posture gradually relaxing. The other Zarkai eventually left the dining hall, still looking unhappy. Jack wondered what consequences Zira might face for continuing to associate with him, but he was glad she was willing to take the risk. "Tomorrow," Jack said as they finished eating, "I'll introduce you to Ketchup's more exciting cousin, Hot Sauce." Zira's eyes widened with interest. "I look forward to it." Neither of them knew that their unusual friendship would soon be tested in ways neither could imagine. But for now, they were just two people from different worlds, sharing a meal and building a bridge between their cultures, one French fry at a time. Jack had almost forgotten about the whole protection bond incident when alarms blared throughout Space Station Harmony 1 week later. The sound was high-pitched and urgent, making Jack jump from his desk. Red lights flashed in the hallways. The station's computer voice came through the speakers. "Security breach in Docking Bay 4. All personnel evacuate sectors 12 through 15. This is not a drill." Jack quickly saved his work and left his office. The hallways were filling with people, moving quickly toward the designated safety areas. Station security officers in blue uniforms directed the flow of traffic. "Everyone stay calm," one officer called out. "Move to your assigned emergency shelters." Jack helped an elderly Galatian diplomat who was moving slowly, letting her lean on his arm. They joined the crowd heading toward Shelter Zone B. Jack knew his duty as a diplomat was to help civilians reach safety, so he stayed at the back of the group, making sure no one was left behind. As they turned a corner into a main corridor, someone grabbed Jack's arm and pulled him sideways into a small maintenance hallway. Jack spun around, ready to defend himself, only to find Zira's intense silver-flecked eyes inches from his face. "You should not be here," she hissed. "The Kravik raiders are searching for high-value hostages. As a diplomat, you are a target. How do you know they're Kravik?" Jack asked, surprised. The station's security forces hadn't even identified the intruders yet. Zira's expression darkened. "I recognize their energy signatures. My homeworld has dealt with them before?" She pulled a small device from her robes and pressed it into his hand. "This will mask your biosignature. Follow me." "Wait, I need to help with the evacuation. The human security forces have that well in hand," Zira interrupted. "Your presence would only endanger others if the Kravik capture you." Before Jack could protest further, the sound of heavy footsteps and strange weapons fire came from the main corridor. Zira pushed him deeper into the maintenance tunnel. "What are Kravik raiders?" Jack whispered as they moved through the narrow passage. "Pirates," Zira explained quietly. "They attack ships and stations, take hostages for ransom, and steal technology. They are brutal and efficient." They navigated through the station's service passages, Zira moving with surprising familiarity through the human-designed infrastructure. Jack wondered how she knew her way around so well but didn't ask. Twice they froze as armed figures passed nearby intersections, hulking shapes with tough skin that looked like armor and glowing orange eyes. The Kravik were taller than humans, with powerful builds and weapons that hummed with energy. "Where are we going?" Jack whispered as they descended a maintenance ladder. "To the Zarkai diplomatic vessel," Zero replied. "It has defensive capabilities beyond what this station possesses." "Won't your people be upset if you bring me there?" Jack asked, remembering the disapproving looks from the other Zarkai. Zero paused, looking at him in the dim emergency lighting. "The protection bond takes precedence over their disapproval." They emerged into a secondary docking bay where a sleek, silver ship waited. It was smaller than the main human vessels, but had an elegant design that suggested advanced technology. As they approached, Jack noticed other Zarkai diplomats standing guard at the entry ramp. Elder Mazrin, the dark blue-skinned Zarkai who had glared at them in the dining hall, stepped forward. He addressed Zira in their native language, his tone sharp and clearly angry. He pointed at Jack several times during his speech. Zira responded with equal sharpness, her normally musical voice taking on a steely edge. The elder looked from her to Jack, then back again before reluctantly stepping aside. Once aboard, Jack was led to what appeared to be a command center. Through the windows, he could see emergency lights flashing across sections of the space station. "What did you say to him?" Jack asked. "I reminded him that the bond of shared sustenance supersedes his authority in matters of protection," Zira sighed, moving to a control panel. "And that to deny shelter to one who is bonded would violate our most sacred laws." "You're risking a lot for me," Jack said quietly. "This is a sovereign Zarkai vessel. Bringing me here could cause a diplomatic incident." Zira was checking sensor readings, her fingers moving quickly over the controls. "Your safety takes precedence over protocol." "Why?" Jack asked. "Because of some misunderstood French fries?" She turned to face him fully, silver eyes intense. "Because I choose to honor the bond even if you did not intend it. The protection pledge is sacred to my people, and I will not abandon it simply because it arose from a cultural misunderstanding." Before Jack could respond, the ship's computers made a chiming sound. Zira turned back to the screens, her expression hardening as she viewed the incoming data. "The Kravik have breached the station's secure diplomatic quarters," she announced. "They are systematically searching for representatives from worlds with high ransom potential. Earth would definitely pay," Jack admitted grimly. "The station's defensive systems were undergoing maintenance today," Zira said, studying the data. "That is not publicly known information. The Kravik must have inside help." Jack moved closer to the viewing screen. "You think someone on the station is working with them?" "It is the most logical conclusion," Zira replied. "The timing is too perfect to be coincidence." The other Zarkai in the command center were speaking rapidly in their own language. One of them, a female with light blue skin similar to Zira's, approached them. "The Elder Council demands we depart immediately," she told Zira. "Our primary directive is to protect our diplomatic team, not to involve ourselves in the station's security breach." "We cannot abandon the station," Zira argued. "There are still our people on board as well as representatives from 17 allied worlds." "The decision has been made," the other diplomat said firmly. "Prepare for emergency departure." Zira looked at Jack, conflict clear in her eyes. Jack could see she was torn between her duty to her people and her promise to protect him. "Go," Jack said quietly. "I'll be fine. The station security will handle this." "No," Zira said firmly. "I will not leave you here." She turned to the other diplomat. "Tell the elders I am invoking the right of protection. I will remain behind with a shuttle." The other Zarkai looked shocked. "You cannot invoke such an ancient right for a human. The elders will never approve." "They do not need to approve," Zira stated. "The right is absolute once invoked." As the Zarkai argued, Jack noticed something on one of the screens. A group of Kravik raiders was approaching the docking bay where the Zarkai vessel was berthed. "We have company coming," he warned, pointing to the screen. The argument stopped immediately as everyone turned to look. The main Zarkai vessel began powering up its engines, preparing for emergency departure. Zira grabbed Jack's arm and pulled him toward a side corridor. Come, we must reach the shuttle bay before they seal it for departure. They ran through the gleaming corridors of the Zarkai ship. Jack could feel the vessel humming as it prepared to detach from the station. Behind them, he heard shouting and what sounded like weapons fire. The Kravik had reached the main airlock. Almost there, Zira said as they approached a small bay with 3 shuttle-sized vessels. Just as they reached the bay, a massive impact rocked the ship, throwing them both against a wall. Emergency lights activated and a new alarm began to sound. They are attempting to breach our hull, Zira explained, pulling herself up. We must hurry. As they scrambled into the nearest shuttle, Jack realized that what had started with a simple offer of French fries had now placed them both in terrible danger. But looking at Zira's determined face as she activated the shuttle's systems, he also knew he couldn't imagine facing this danger with anyone else by his side. Inside the small Zarkai shuttle, Zira's fingers flew across the control panel. The shuttle hummed to life, lights blinking on the dashboard. Jack strapped himself into the passenger seat, watching as Zira prepared for launch. The main Zarkai vessel is detaching from the station, she explained, pointing to a screen showing the larger ship pulling away. We have minutes before the Kravik realize we're in here. What's the plan? Jack asked, trying to stay calm despite the chaos around. We cannot outrun the Kravik ships, Zira said honestly. This shuttle is not designed for combat. But we can help the station's security forces locate and capture the raiders. The shuttle's screens showed multiple red dots moving through the station. Kravik raiders searching for valuable hostages. The station's security teams were shown as blue dots, trying to contain the threat. The station's security doesn't know where all the Kravik are hiding, Jack observed. But your sensors can track them, yes, Zira confirmed. Our technology can detect their unique energy signatures. If we transmit this information to the station's security teams, they can target their response more effectively. Jack leaned forward. Can we do that from here? Yes, but it would reveal certain capabilities we prefer to keep private, Zira replied, hesitating. People's lives are at stake, Jack said firmly, including yours and mine. After a moment's consideration, Zira nodded and began working on the communications system. I will transmit the data. But we must be careful. The Kravik might detect the signal and trace it back to us. As Zira worked, the shuttle's sensors beeped. Urgently, on the screen, 3 red dots were moving directly toward their location in the docking bay. They found us, Jack said, pointing to the screen. Zira looked up, her silver-flecked eyes narrowing. How? The biosignature maskers should have prevented this? Jack thought for a moment. Unless they weren't tracking me at all. What if you were the target from the beginning? Zira looked startled. Why would Kravik raiders target a junior Zarkai diplomat? You tell me, Jack said. You're the one they're following. Before Zira could respond, a heavy impact shook the shuttle. Through the viewport, they could see 3 Kravik warriors approaching, their orange eyes glowing in the dim light of the docking bay. One of them carried a device that seemed to be tracking something. We must leave now, Zira said, activating the shuttle's engines. Hold on. The shuttle lifted off the docking bay floor. The Kravik raised their weapons, firing energy blasts that rocked the small vessel. Zira expertly maneuvered between the shots, guiding the shuttle toward the bay doors. The doors are sealed for emergency lockdown, Jack pointed out, seeing the massive metal barriers blocking their exit. Yes, Zira agreed calmly. She pressed a sequence of buttons on the control panel, which is why we will make our own door. A beam of intense blue light shot from the front of the shuttle, cutting into the metal of the bay doors. The Kravik continued firing at them, but Zira kept the shuttle moving in an unpredictable pattern to avoid being hit. The shuttle wasn't supposed to have weapons, Jack said in surprise. It doesn't, Zira replied. This is a mining tool designed for asteroid excavation, but it works well enough for our purposes. The blue beam cut a large circle in the bay doors. With a final push of the engines, Zira sent the shuttle crashing through the weakened metal, out into the space surrounding the station, transmitting. Data to station security now, Zira said as they cleared the bay. They will know exactly where each Kravik raider is located. On the screens, they could see the blue dots of security forces converging on the red dots of the Kravik. The plan was working. Why do you think they were tracking you specifically? Jack asked, returning to his earlier question. Zero was quiet for a moment, focusing on steering the shuttle around the station's exterior. Finally, she spoke. There is something I have not told you. Something that may explain their interest in me. Jack waited patiently as Zira seemed to organize her thoughts. I am not merely a junior diplomat, she admitted. I am Zira Nalshiv, daughter of High Elder Turan Nalshiv, leader of the Zarkai Council. Jack's eyes widened. Your royalty? We do not use that term, Zira corrected. But my father is the most influential leader of our people. My presence here was meant to be secret for my protection. Only the senior diplomats knew my true identity. So the Kravik might want to kidnap you for ransom, Jack concluded. That makes sense. But how? Did they know you were here? Someone must have told them, Zira said grimly. Someone with access to classified information. As they circled the station, Jack noticed a larger ship approaching a Kravik raider vessel, heavily armed and moving fast. We've got bigger problems. Now, he said, pointing to the approaching threat. Zira saw it too. Their main vessel, we cannot outrun or outfight it. Jack studied the station's exterior, looking for options. Can we get back inside the station somewhere else? Away from the Kravik raiders? Zira checked the shuttle's sensors. There is a maintenance airlock on level 6 that appears unguarded, but it will be risky. If we are caught between the Kravik inside and their ship outside, it's better than staying out here as target practice, Jack decided. Let's go for it. Zira guided the shuttle toward the maintenance airlock, using the station's exterior structures for cover. The Kravik vessel fired several shots that came uncomfortably close, making the shuttle shake. Almost there, Zira said, her voice tense but controlled. Jack watched as they approached the airlock. It was small, barely big enough for their shuttle. Are you sure we can fit through that? No, Zira admitted. Well, but we must try. As they neared the airlock, the shuttle's communication system suddenly activated. A voice spoke in the Zarkai language, harsh and demanding. Zira's face went pale, the blue of her skin lightening with what Jack assumed was fear or shock. What did they say? He asked. Double quotes, they ... Zira hesitated. They said they want me to surrender. Myself, if I do, they will spare the station and everyone on it. That's a lie, Jack said immediately. Once they have you, there's nothing stopping them from doing whatever they want. I know, Zira agreed. But they also said something else. Something troubling. She took a deep breath. They said, Your father sends his regards. Jack frowned. What does that mean? It means this is not a random attack, Zira explained, her voice shaking slightly. This is political. Someone wants to destabilize my father's leadership by capturing or killing me. Another blast from the Kravik ship hit nearby, sending debris floating past them. They were running out of time. The airlock is our only chance, Jack said firmly. We'll figure out the politics later. Zira nodded and directed the shuttle toward the small opening. As they approached, Jack realized just how tight the fit would be. This is going to be close, he muttered. Zira slowed the shuttle to a crawl, carefully aligning it with the airlock. In my culture, she said suddenly, there is a saying, the bond forged in crisis shines brightest in darkness. Jack smiled despite their dire situation. On Earth, we say a friend in need is a friend indeed. It seems our peoples have wisdom in common. Zira replied as she guided the shuttle into the narrow opening. Metal scraped against metal as the shuttle squeezed into the airlock. Warning. Lights flashed on the control panel. For a moment, Jack thought they might be stuck, trapped half in and half out of the station. Then, with a final push of the engines, the shuttle slipped through. They were back inside Space Station Harmony, but their troubles were far from over. The shuttle settled inside the maintenance airlock with a metallic groan. Warning lights flashed on the control panel, showing damage to the outer hull from the tight squeeze. Zira quickly shut down the engines and activated the airlock cycling. Sequence. The shuttle will not fly again without repairs, she said, checking the damage reports. We are now on foot. Jack unstrapped himself from the seat. At least we're back inside the station. What's our next move? We must reach the station's security control center, Zira replied. The data we transmitted will help, but I can provide more detailed information about Kravik tactics and weaknesses. As the airlock finished cycling, they exited the shuttle into a dim maintenance corridor. Emergency lighting cast long shadows along the walls. The station's alarms had stopped, replaced by an eerie silence. That's not good, Jack said, noticing the quiet. Either the situation is under control or ... or the Kravik have taken over the station's systems, Zira finished. We should proceed with caution. They moved carefully through the maintenance corridors, using Zira's small handheld scanner to avoid Kravik patrols. Jack was impressed by how capable Zira was in a crisis. Very different from the nervous young diplomat he'd met at the reception. You're good at this, he whispered as they paused at a junction. I received combat training since childhood, Zira explained. All children of high-ranking Zarkai do, though I prefer diplomatic studies. Quite a jump from diplomat to action? Hero? Jack commented with a small smile. The protection bond requires both skill sets, Zira replied seriously. Though Jack caught a hint of amusement in her silver eyes, they reached a ladder that would take them up to Level 4, where the security control center was located. As they climbed, Jack thought about what Zira had revealed about her identity. So, your father is the leader of your people? He said quietly. That's why you were so formal when we first met. You're used to everyone treating you differently. Zira paused on the ladder. Yes, when people learn who my father is, they see me as a political tool, not a person. That is why I enjoy our ... friendship. You offered me French fries because you thought I seemed lonely, not because of who my father is. I still would have shared them if I'd known, Jack assured her. That is why the bond between us matters. To me, Zira said simply, continuing to climb. They reached level 4 and carefully opened the access hatch. The main corridor was empty but showed signs of a struggle, scorch marks on the walls from energy weapons and a broken security barricade. The control center is 2 sections ahead, Jack said, orienting himself. Zira checked her scanner. There are 4 Kravik between us and there. We need an alternative route, Jack thought for a moment. The ceiling maintenance tunnels. They run above the corridors and connect all the sections on this level. He pointed to a service panel in the ceiling. With Zira's help, he pushed it open and pulled himself up into the narrow tunnel above. Then he reached down to help Zira up. They crawled through the dusty tunnels, guided by Jack's knowledge of the station layout. Below them, through small grates, they could see Kravik raiders patrolling the corridors. They're searching methodically, Zira observed. This is not a random attack. Someone's giving them very specific instructions, Jack agreed. Someone who knows the station well. They reached the section above the security control center and peered through a grate. Inside, they could see 6 station security officers, tied up in one corner. 2 Kravik guards watched over them while a third worked at the main control console. They've taken over the security systems, Jack whispered. That's why the alarm stopped. Zira studied the situation. We needed distraction. Jack looked around the maintenance tunnel and spotted an environmental control panel. I have an idea. If we redirect the air circulation system... Working together, they adjusted the controls to flood the security center with cold air from the station's exterior cooling system. Within moments, the temperature in the room below plummeted. The Kravik guards looked around in confusion as their breath became visible in the suddenly frigid air. Kravik are highly sensitive to cold, Zira explained. Their homeworld is a desert planet. As the raiders became distracted and sluggish from the cold, Jack and Zira removed the grate and dropped into the room. Zira moved with incredible speed, using a Zarkai fighting technique to disable 2 of the Kravik before they could react. Jack rushed to free the security officers, who quickly joined the fight. Within minutes, the Kravik in the control center were subdued. The lead security officer, a tall woman named Captain Reyes, took control of the console. "The Kravik have control of levels 2 and 3, she reported, "and they're holding 20 diplomats hostage in the main conference room." "They're after me," Zira admitted. "I am Zira Nalshiv, daughter of the Zarkai High Elder." Captain Reyes looked surprised, but quickly refocused. "That explains a lot. Their leader keeps demanding we turn over the Zarkai heir, or they'll start executing hostages." "I should surrender myself," Zira said quietly. "I cannot allow others to die for me." "No," Jack said firmly. "That's exactly what they want. And once they have you, they'll kill the hostages anyway." Captain Reyes nodded in agreement. "We need a better plan." They gathered around the security monitors, watching the Kravik movements. Jack noticed something odd about their search pattern. "They're avoiding Level 1 completely," he pointed out. "Why?" "Level 1 is just guest quarters and recreation areas," Captain Reyes said. "Nothing valuable there." "Or," Jack said slowly, "someone they're working with is there. Someone they've been ordered not to disturb." Zira's eyes widened. "The traitor!" They checked the Level 1 security logs and found something suspicious. One of the diplomatic guest quarters had been accessed using a high-level security override just before the attack began. "Guest Suite 12, Captain Reyes read, "assigned to Elder Mazrin," Zira finished, her voice tight with anger. "The senior Zarkai diplomat who objected to my friendship with Jack." "He's been working with the Kravik?" Jack asked, shocked. "He belongs to a political faction that opposes my father," Zira explained. "They believe the Zarkai should remain isolated, not engage with other species. My father's outreach policies threaten their power." Captain Reyes tapped commands into the console. "I can send a security team to apprehend him." "No," Zira said. "He will have safeguards. We need to lure him out." She turned to Jack. "And I know how. The plan was risky." Using the station's communication system, they broadcast a message that Zira had been captured and was being held in Docking Bay 2, ready for transfer to the Kravik ship. As Zira had predicted, Elder Mazarin hurried to the docking bay, eager to witness her capture personally. Instead, he found Jack waiting alone. "Where is she?" Mazarin demanded. "Safe," Jack replied. "Unlike you." Zira stepped out from behind a cargo container, along with Captain Reyes and her security team. "Hello, Elder. You should have approved of my friendship with the humans. They make excellent allies." With Elder Mazarin captured, they used his security codes to send false orders to the Kravik, directing them to gather in the main cargo bay. There, station security surrounded and captured them. Freeing the hostages. Hours later, Jack and Zira stood at a viewport, watching as the Kravik ship was escorted away by Earth Alliance vessels. The crisis was over. "Your father will be proud," Jack said. "Perhaps," Zira replied. "Though he may not approve of my methods," she looked at Jack, "or my choice of protector." "Hey, I think I did okay for someone who just offered some French fries," Jack protested with a smile. Zira's serious expression softened. "You did much more than okay. You proved that the bond between us, accidental or not, is real. So what happens now?" Jack asked. "Do you go back to being a secret princess and I go back to being a regular diplomat?" "I am not a princess," Zira corrected him. "And there is nothing regular about you, Jack Miller." She hesitated. "I must return to my homeworld to testify against Elder Mazarin, but I would like to continue our friendship." "When I return," Jack smiled, "I'd like that too. And next time I'll introduce you to ice cream. It makes French fries look boring." Zira's silver-flecked eyes sparkled. "Then I look forward to forming an even stronger bond." As they watched the stars together, Jack realized that sometimes the greatest connections begin with the smallest gestures. And sometimes a plate of French fries can change everything.